I am really keen to see the industry align behind removing complexity and improving simplicity in the area. And one part of that really stands out for me, which is in the area of metrics. So we're all familiar with the terms, we're familiar with the actual meaning of what's in the story, but life cycle assessments, carbon footprint assessments, PEF, CPDs, TM65, TM66, so many metrics. And each of them, of course, has very well rooted in trying to achieve the best outcomes, but I think for both the market and for manufacturers, having so many brings lots of problems. As a manufacturer, you want to make sure that you take the right thing to your customer, but if your customer has so many options and isn't clear on which to choose, then you don't really know which horse to back. And so I think that I already see great work being done on this. I think that the LIA is doing great work. I think that I'm involved in groups in the LIA and in Lighting Europe in trying to align behind standard and trying to or align behind these metrics. I'm really keen on for the industry's sake, and it's all trying to do the same thing. So if we can move in that direction and continue to move in that direction, I think that would be a really good thing.
Okay. I think you probably shouldn't lose sight of the fact we have actually gone quite a long way in the last 10 years anyway.
Yeah, we do.
The removal of incandescent light sources and the move across to LED, which a 90% reduction in itself. And we all seem to have forgotten and part of that, but we are an awful lot further forward now than we were 10, 11 years ago when we first started to move through eco-design and start to phase out the less efficient light sources. So we have already made some quite good progress, I think, in the industry.
I think you're right, we've made absolutely huge progress there. But Neil, you were mentioning many metrics and the issue of which horse to back. Alan, what's your view on that?
That's a very good point. In our part of the market, in street amenity, the one, I think that was slightly loaded, Bob. The one that jumps out is TM66. I think you might be familiar. So TM66 is a really good metric for, I can only speak for street amenity lighting for us. It lays out through CAM the steps that we need to understand and effectively score against. But what those steps do for us is they provide us with the answers, so and the direction in which to head. So unlike standards, for example, the scoring allows you to understand where you are, but how to get to the next stage. So everybody who looks at TM66, wherever they're scoring that particular product or that particular range, can see what they need to do to go to the next level up. And therefore, TM66 for us is a really very, very useful metric to use.
Okay, so full disclosure, not everybody may be online. Wondering about the in-joke there, that was Society of Lighting back in 2020. And that was a team effort. We have some amazing people on the team who made it as useful as it is. But I'm going to open that up because it's not the only metric, there's others. And the fundamental one is, how do we deal with the issue of multiple competing metrics? But I'm going to suggest, Graham, do you want to come up with that one?
Yeah, competing metrics, which one to back, it's quite difficult to understand depending on where your starting point is. So I think depending on where your insertion point is in the value chain or in the pyramid, I think then will lead you to certain answers. I would firmly agree that TM66 is definitely a stepping stone from nothing to something. And that's really, if something comes out of today, I think that's the pressure point that needs to be exerted to suggest that we need to go from nothing to something. And by doing that, we will hopefully pull the caravan forward. I think that's being a huge multinational boat that we are, we started on this road in 2014. We've had EPD since then. And we have our own circular design rules and regulations within the factories. So we're not designing luminaires which come from that background, which, because of their design, will fulfill those criteria. So, and that's not everybody's stepping stone. But I think that we need to do something, and small steps are still small steps. So for me, regardless of what the measurement metric is, you need to make a step forward from the old linear model, which is build and use and throw away. And the other stuff that comes into that, which is obviously the other parts of sustainability, which I will talk about later.
Now, that brings us to a really brilliant point. So the LIA is a broad church. So we have members who are multinationals, huge size, down to very, very small micro companies, and we go everywhere from the contract side to the domestic and decorative side and components. So Sarah, I'm going to come to you on the decorative side. Metrics, is this something which is in your space or yet, or what do you think?
It is very important, and I think it's about that consistency. You know, as lighting designers, for example, for architectural light fittings, they're going to want to know, to be able to compare apples with apples. So I do believe that TM66 is going to be the way to go. And it's about having that transparency and honesty about your figures. You might get something coming across from China, which is going to give you a 1 lumen figure, for example. And that's not really going to be very helpful when you're looking at a downlight, for example. You know, is it the LED? Is it the source? Or is it the actual engine itself? So it's transparency over those figures and making sure that there is that consistency really across what each manufacturer is saying.
I think part of the other risk here is, without a clear metric for us to kind of benchmark ourselves, you end up in a position where it is your clients that are picking some arbitrary means of measurement and then stipulating to you how they want the data presented. And I think this is why it's key that we have something within the industry that is recognised and understood, so that we can say, look, this is the information, this is how we provide a level playing field.
And I think that's interesting. I think in a week on Tuesday, we've got Rebecca Hatch from WSP presenting at the LIA on sustainability illuminated. And they describe a journey how, when they're looking at this large project on street lighting, they went out to 5 major manufacturers and said, what are we doing on circular economy? And they all came up with this name for their circular economy thing, but there was no way they could compare it. So they used TM66 as that method of getting level playing field, and that worked for them. I'm going to open the question to the rest of the floor, those people that have, and maybe Simon, because will you be coming in this on the metrics or filling into LCAs and things later for the build side, or?
Yeah.
Coming from the components manufacturer? I
mean, my throwback from this is TM66. It is, to me, the benchmark. We're very much influenced by Lighting Industry Association. A lot of the people that we supply are members of the Lighting Industry Association. So, TM66 is a good benchmark, as Dave was saying, but it does give us all, the right blocks to head for. Something that's stable, consistent throughout the industry.
Well, for me, one of the most interesting things about TM66 is that it's accessible. So lots of the sustainability metrics are well suited. So I think EPDs, for example, are extremely popular for many years in construction, and perhaps more achievable if you're making simple products. But if you're making complex products, then gathering the data that's needed to populate those things is a challenge if you're a larger company. But if you're a small company, an SME, for example, then it's impossible challenge, I think. So TM66 is accessible.
I agree with you there, but there's also quite a bit of help as you look down, either down the supply chain or to who you're actually supplying. I mean, it was interesting that where we've taken a look into is one of our material suppliers and the amount of information that we could get from them with exactly what we're trying to achieve.
I think when just before we opened the meeting, Don was saying about having the right language set, use language that people understand. Otherwise, we can disappear down this rabbit hole of acronyms, and lighting's got enough acronyms as it is. Let's just double that. That was a brilliant first question. I hope everybody online has enjoyed that. So,
could I just say one thing on that as well, if I may? I think Dave's point originally, in terms of the journey that we've undertaken thus far, is really valid. It wasn't so long ago I attended Light and Build, and I mean, 12 years, 10 years ago, but the holy grail was to meet 100 lumens per watt. And that would have seemed to be a country mile from where we were operating at that time. Performance has driven us into a completely new sphere. And the original question that we had was, how do we address the environmental concerns along with matching quality and performance? And the performance side, I think, through the legislation, through standards, through environmental sustainability, and through responsible manufacturing, has certainly driven us up to a certain point. It's now, in my mind, absolutely vital that we speak a similar language in terms of our standard measure. However, when you're a multinational organisation working in different standards in different countries, it does become restrictive because of the cost associated in producing materials and products for different standards, and that is sometimes handicap we have to deal with. So whilst this is very much a UK focused discussion, and I totally support the drive towards a common standard, we have to take into account that we ideally like to work in a bigger platform as well with a global common standard.
So we don't live in an island, actually. I wanted to come back. Oh, sorry.
So I was just going to say, that's absolutely right. And that's where we need to get to. What we don't want to be doing as an island nation, for those of us that really sell mostly in the UK, is when we're on those odd excursions into overseas markets, to be stuck with more compliance, different compliance, and more cost, to make us uncompetitive in that very market we're trying to reach into.
And I was at the Lighting Europe event, I think last May, and one day of it was my friend, opposite number, spent a whole day talking about circular economy regulations in France, and it was brilliant. And then kept going and kept going and kept going. In the end, I said, Greg, can you do this? No. And your point is well made. If you're a multinational, how do you deal with all these things?
Yeah.
How do we have stuff which works and then also works across borders? Yeah. People are increasingly saying to me, it's great we're doing this. We're doing that today. We can't get the information out of our supply chain. We can't fill bits of the data out yet. But I think it was Graham who said it's a stepping stone. It's in the broad direction.
I'm going to come back on another Dave's point as well, that I at least picked up as how much we've done already exists. I guess the point I want to make is that there's been a tremendous step forward in terms of move to LED. The opportunities in terms of efficiency improvement there are dropping off now, but there are still huge untapped opportunities in technology, particularly in not only area controls. We've had lots of discussions with government about how, if you take the US DOE's energy savings for opportunities for LEDs report, I think from back in 2017, even then they were saying, 2019, sorry, they were saying that through controls that as of last year are now part of Part L, so they're the default method of achieving compliance with the building regulations, you can save typically 37% in a or more in a office environment. But despite the fact that part of the regulations, there's still a huge lack of enforcement of it. So we have great technologies that are far from new. Occupancy and daylight sensing have been around for such a long time, but largely untapped. And if industry can, certainly I'm working with industry partners, and some of whom are represented in this room, to try to improve the uptake of the stuff that we already do, but it's not sufficiently taken account of.
So you started off this question, and we'll move on to the next question in a second, with the many metrics. If we were to lighting controls, is that metric level Lenny?
Could be.
You know, we're all used to the four, you know, there's going to be 500 lux, you know, UGL 19, you know, CRI 80, uniformity, whatever. We now don't have, is Lenny going to be baked in? So those of us, you know, not in the room, somebody here is laughing, so I'll go ask Graham, come on. Go.
I have a major problem with the metrics that we use because they're tick box exercises. Nobody knows or understands really why they do it. And in the UK, I'm sorry, but we have a desperate problem with, we've always done it this way. And to agree exactly with what Neil said, if we used the technology that we currently have, with the lighting technology that we have, with the design technology that we have, with the testing and documentation technology that we have, we wouldn't have a problem. But the issue is we don't. So therefore, CRI of 80 is minimal and poor. 4,000 Kelvin, we choose that. Nobody really knows why. There's no documentation that suggests you should.
True.
Everybody just goes, yeah, that's the way we've always done it.
And we do that.
And we do that pretty much right down the line. So it's CRI or UGR of less than 19. Why? Well, I don't know. That's what we've always done.
And they do it because blue used to be more efficient. You know, the cooler was more efficient.
That's a long time ago, but that's a long
We're
time.
going to move on. But I
Anyway,
asked everyone they don't understand the metrics because Ike and I were working on a training course last week, and she laughed at one of my slides, which is, can everybody stand up according to their height in alphabetical order? Okay, what? And that's what people are doing, reply metrics. But let's move on because of time.